The email landed at 2:17 a.m., not in my personal inbox but on the confidential tip line for Apex's portfolio companies. The firm was Innovate Dynamics. The subject line contained a single chilling word: fidelity. Inside was a short video, my wife Sarah laughing in a hotel room with her boss David Chen. I recognized the wallpaper, the Grand Hyatt, just blocks from our apartment. The timestamp was from that evening, when she'd said she was working late. Then, the gut punch. A second email forwarded from HR, time-stamped just moments after the video. It was a salary adjustment form. Sarah Vance, approved for a $20,000 raise. She sold our marriage for a raise, completely unaware she was selling it to me. Sarah wasn't just my wife, she was my partner in ambition. We'd met in business school, two sharks in a tank, hungry for success. When she joined Innovate Dynamics, I was her biggest advocate. She'd come home, furious, complaining her boss, David Chen, was a corporate drone who couldn't see her value. "He's holding me back, Marcus," she'd vent over dinner, fire in her eyes. I believed her. I'd tell her to be patient, that talent always wins. I even offered to discreetly put in a good word with the board, a simple, untraceable call from Apex. "No," she'd insisted, her voice sharp with pride. "I'll do it myself, on my own merit." I admired that fierce independence. Now that merit had a price tag confirmed by an HR department I controlled. And David Chen? The drone I'd barely registered on a balance sheet was the man in that video. He wasn't just an underperforming asset in my portfolio. He was a cancer in my marriage. My rage was cold, precise. The shock was gone. In its place, a plan began to form. They thought they were playing a game. They didn't know I owned the entire board. Our story wasn't a romance. It was a business plan. We met in the Wharton Library, surrounded by the ghosts of future titans. We weren't whispering sweet nothings. We were dissecting hostile takeovers. Our first date was a marathon session deconstructing a case study on corporate restructuring. Love, for us, was a byproduct of mutual respect for each other's killer instinct. We were a two-person merger, poised to conquer New York. Our vows were less about in sickness and in health, and more about market share and EBITDA. That's why I never told her about the Innovate Dynamics acquisition. It happened 3 years ago. The company was failing, a bleeding wound in a competitor's portfolio. I saw potential in its core tech, but not its leadership. Through Apex, I used a series of blind trusts and subsidiary LLCs to acquire a controlling 51% stake. It was a classic vulture capital play. Buy the debt, control the board, gut the rot, and reap the rewards. It was completely anonymous. To the world, and to my wife, Innovate Dynamics was just another mid-cap tech firm. Sarah was already a rising star there. When the acquisition went through, she celebrated the ousting of the old CEO, thrilled about the new aggressive ownership. She had no idea she was talking about me. I kept it quiet, deliberately. It was a firewall, a separation of church and state. But there was another reason. I wanted to see what she would become without my shadow. I wanted her to win on her own terms, just as she'd always claimed she wanted. It was, I thought, the ultimate vote of confidence. A secret gift. I remember one night, years ago, looking out over the city from our first apartment. "We'll build it all, Marcus," she'd said, her head on my shoulder. "An empire. But we do it our way, clean, no shortcuts." Now looking at the video of her and David Chen, I saw the shortcut she'd taken. She didn't just cheat on a husband. She fundamentally defrauded our entire partnership. She'd leveraged our marriage for a pittance, thinking she was being clever. She complained about David holding her back, but the moment he dangled a promotion, she went straight to her knees. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. And in my world, strategic errors have consequences. She thought she was playing chess in her little department. She had no idea she was a pawn on my board. And my queen had just been taken by a worthless piece. It was time to clear the table. The next morning, I made coffee. Same routine, same quiet clicks of the machine. When Sarah came into the kitchen, she was glowing. Not with guilt, but with a smug, triumphant energy that made my skin crawl. She was wearing my favorite of her silk robes, the one I bought her for our anniversary. She wrapped her arms around my neck from behind as I stared out the window. "Morning, sleepyhead." Her voice was bright, almost giddy. I didn't flinch, I just handed her a mug. "You were late. Everything okay?" "Better than okay," she chirped, taking a sip. "I have incredible news." "Here it comes." I turned, forcing a neutral expression. "Oh?" David finally came through. He gave me the senior director title, and Marcus a $20,000 raise. She said it with a flourish, as if she'd just summited Everest. She watched my face, looking for the validation she craved. I manufactured a slow smile. "Sarah, that's fantastic. Congratulations." I leaned in and kissed her cheek. It felt like kissing a stranger. "I told you he'd see your value eventually. What changed his mind?" The question was a scalpel, and I watched to see if it would draw blood. She shrugged a little too casually. "I just laid it all out for him. My contributions, my vision for the department. I made him an offer he couldn't refuse." A ghost of a smirk played on her lips, a private joke I was now brutally aware of. She thought she was talking about a business pitch. "Well, you earned it," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "We should celebrate. I'll make a reservation at Per Se for Friday." I wanted to see her face when she realized she'd be dining with the man who was about to professionally execute her. She beamed. "Perfect." As she went to get ready, radiating a success she hadn't earned, I walked into my home office and closed the door. The mask of the supportive husband fell away. My face was stone. I picked up my phone, not my personal one, but the encrypted device I used for Apex Business. My first call was to the chairman of the Innovate Dynamics board, a man I had installed myself. "Morning, Robert," I said, my voice low and devoid of warmth. "Apex is mandating a full operational audit at Innovate, effective immediately." There was a brief pause on the other end. "An audit, Marcus? Is there a problem?" "We're looking for inefficiencies, redundancies, poorly allocated capital." I let the words hang in the air. "I'm sending in my own team to lead it. I want full access. Personnel files, expense reports, internal communications, everything. No department is off limits. Especially marketing and sales." Quote, "Understood," Robert said, recognizing the tone. This wasn't a request. "I also want to review all recent promotions and salary adjustments. Specifically, anyone approved for more than a 5% increase in the last quarter." I pictured the form from HR, the one with David Chen's signature next to Sarah's name. "I want to understand the ROI on our top talent. My team wouldn't just be looking at numbers on a spreadsheet. They would be my scalpel, sent to carve out the cancer David and Sarah had created. They thought their secret was safe in a hotel room and a buried HR file. They had no idea I was about to turn their entire professional world inside out, searching for a single, cancerous cell, and I knew exactly where to find it. The audit was a formality. It was the delivery system for my verdict. The next few days were a masterclass in deception. I worked from my home office, orchestrating the audit, while playing the role of the proud husband. I'd make her coffee in the morning and listen to her excited chatter about her new role, the plans she was making for her team. Each word was a fresh betrayal, and I savored it, filing it away as evidence. My team at Apex was already inside Innovate Dynamics, silent and efficient. They were ghosts in the machine, pulling every thread I instructed them to. On Wednesday, the storm I'd created finally hit our shore. Sarah came home late, throwing her briefcase on the floor with a thud. The triumphant glow was gone, replaced by a dark cloud of anxiety. She barely acknowledged me, heading straight for the wine rack and pulling out a bottle with a frantic tug. "Rough day?" I asked, leaning against the kitchen counter, watching her. She poured a large glass, her hand trembling slightly. It's a nightmare. Some private equity firm, Apex, launched a surprise audit. They're everywhere, Marcus, tearing through everything. She took a long, desperate swallow of wine. They've frozen all non-essential spending and are reviewing every single promotion from the last 6 months. Her eyes met mine, wide with a flicker of panic. Every single one. I feigned a thoughtful frown, swirling the ice in my own glass. Apex Venture Partners? I know them by reputation. Brutally efficient. They don't move like that without a reason. Someone must have flagged a major issue for the owners. But what issue? She snapped, pacing the kitchen. David is losing his mind. He's been in back-to-back meetings. These auditors, they're like sharks. They're demanding detailed justifications for everything, for everyone. The word hung in the air between us. Everyone. She was thinking about herself. I was thinking about her and David. They're probably just looking to trim fat, I said, my voice a soothing balm on her frayed nerves. Good companies survive audits. The dead weight gets cut. It's just business. I walked over and put my hands on her shoulders, feeling the tension coiled in them. Your promotion was based on merit. You have nothing to worry about, right? She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. The lie was too heavy for her to hold while looking me in the eye. Right, she mumbled, but there was no conviction in it. She knew her merit was documented in a hotel room, not on a project report. I smiled, a thin, cold expression she couldn't see as I looked past her, out at the city lights. Don't worry, we still have our celebration at Per Se on Friday. We'll forget all about it. I was promising her a reprieve, a safe harbor. She had no idea she was sailing straight into the heart of the hurricane. And the hurricane was me. Thursday was the eye of the storm. I spent the day in my office, the door closed, a silent commander directing my troops on the ground at Innovate Dynamics. My head of forensics, a bulldog of an accountant named Jensen, called me at noon. His voice was clipped, buzzing with the thrill of the hunt. We've got him, Marcus. It's cleaner than we hoped. I leaned back in my chair, the leather groaning softly. Tell me. David Chen isn't just incompetent. He's a thief. For the past 2 years, he's been running a shadow expense account. Lavish dinners, gifts, hotel rooms, all coded to a defunct marketing project. We're talking over $100,000 in fraudulent charges. A cold satisfaction settled over me. This was better than I'd imagined. The affair was the motive. This was the weapon. Any specific charges stand out? I asked, knowing the answer. A suite at the Grand Hyatt 2 weeks ago, billed as client entertainment. Same night your asset was promoted. Jensen was discreet. He knew who Sarah was, but on this call, she was just an asset, a data point in a much larger equation. Excellent, I said. Compile everything. Create a preliminary report outlining the fraud. I don't want any mention of personnel, just the financial malfeasance. Send it to the board's audit committee by tomorrow morning. I want David Chen suspended by midday, pending a full investigation. He'll be locked out of his accounts before he finishes his morning coffee, Jensen confirmed. Good, I replied. The audit continues. Now, I want you to dig into Sarah's project files. I want a full, unbiased performance review. I need to know her actual value to this company, untainted by her extracurricular negotiations. When Sarah got home that evening, she looked broken. The anxiety had curdled into raw fear. She dropped her keys on the counter with a clatter, her face pale. They suspended David, she said, her voice a hollow whisper. Walked him out of the office. Security, Marcus. They took his laptop, his phone. They're saying it's about financial misconduct. I walked over, feigning shock, and poured her a glass of water. What? That's serious. I thought this was just a standard audit. It's not, she choked out, sinking onto a bar stool. They're saying he stole from the company. The auditors, this Apex firm, they're ruthless. They're interviewing everyone on his team tomorrow, one by one. Her eyes, wide and terrified, locked onto mine. What if they think I was involved? That promotion. The timing looks terrible. Here was my opening. The masterstroke. I put my hand on her arm. My touch a carefully calibrated performance of concern. This has nothing to do with you, Sarah. You earned that promotion. But, given the circumstances, maybe it's wise to be prepared. She looked up, a sliver of hope in her eyes. Prepared how? I have a friend, I said slowly, choosing my words with surgical precision. Julian Croft. He's the senior partner at Wachtell, best corporate defense attorney in the city. I could make a quiet call, on your behalf. No names. Just run the scenario by him, see what your exposure might be. It would be a favor to me. She stared at me, her mind racing. I could see the conflict. Accepting my help meant admitting she needed it, admitting she was vulnerable. But refusing was terrifying. She was trapped. Would you? She breathed. Marcus, Of course, I said, cutting her off. We're partners, we protect each other. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth, but she swallowed it whole, nodding with a desperate gratitude that was almost pathetic. I was offering her a life raft, knowing full well I was the one who had sunk the ship. Friday night, per se, was a theater of quiet opulence. The city lights glittered below us, a diamond carpet laid at our feet, the very same view we'd once shared, dreaming of our empire. Sarah wore a black dress, elegant but somber. She was trying, forcing small talk, but her fear was a third guest at our table. I let the first two courses pass in relative silence, letting the tension build. Then, as the waiter poured a deep red burgundy, I leaned forward. I spoke to Julian Croft today, I said, my voice low. She froze, a piece of buttered brioche halfway to her lips. And? He said in cases like this, it's all about complicity. The auditors will look for anyone who benefited from the fraud. Anyone whose success was tied to the guilty party. I swirled the wine in my glass, watching its legs cling to the crystal. They'll see a promotion authorized by a man who was stealing from the company, and they will ask one simple question. Why? Her face was a mask of strained composure. But I didn't know. Of course you didn't, I soothed. But these people, the apex auditors, they don't care about what you know. They care about what they can prove. They look for patterns. A sudden promotion, a large raise, right after a trip to a hotel that shows up on a fraudulent expense report. Her fork clattered onto her plate. The sound was unnaturally loud in the hushed restaurant. What hotel? I pulled out my Apex phone, the one she'd never seen before, and tapped the screen. I didn't show it to her, not yet. Julian said the key is to get ahead of it, to offer transparency, to show that your own record is pristine, because once they find one lie, they assume everything is a lie. I looked up from the phone, my eyes meeting hers. I let the mask of the supportive husband fall away, replaced by the cold, analytical gaze of a man who has already passed sentence. They found the charge, Sarah. From the Grand Hyatt, the night you told me you were working late to finish the quarterly reports. I turned the phone and pushed it across the table. It wasn't a complex document. It was a single line from Jensen's preliminary report, highlighted in red. Minder's item vendor, Grand Hyatt. Service, suite and room service. Amount, $1,874.50. Code, client entertainment. Authorized, D. Chen, her breath hitched. The color drained from her face, leaving a sickly, waxy pallor. She wasn't looking at a line item on an expense report. She was looking at the price tag of our marriage, stamped with an auditor's seal. She looked up at me, her eyes screaming a question she was too terrified to ask. I gave her the answer. She already knew the answer. The real question was the one that followed. How? She whispered, her voice cracking. How did you get this? I didn't answer immediately. I took a slow sip of my burgundy, letting the silence stretch, letting her hang in the abyss she had created. There is no Julian Croft, I said finally, my voice a flat line. I never made a call. I didn't need to run a scenario by anyone. Her brow furrowed in confusion, a last flicker of defiance before the dawn of her new reality. What are you talking about? The auditors. Apex. The auditors, I said, leaning forward, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was more menacing than a shout. They aren't a they, Sarah. They're a me. Apex Venture Partners doesn't just have a reputation. I know. It's my firm. The confusion on her face didn't clear. It curdled into disbelief. Her mind was trying to connect dots that were impossibly far apart. I decided to draw the line for her. And through Apex, I continued, my eyes locked on hers. I own Innovate Dynamics, all 51% of it. I have since the day you came home, celebrating the new aggressive ownership. Every complaint you made about David Chen, you made to his boss. Every time you said he was holding you back, you were talking to the man who signed his checks. I kept it quiet because I wanted to see you succeed on your own. I wanted to believe in the merit you were so proud of. The blood drained from her face. It was a physical transformation, the color receding like a tide, leaving behind the pale, damp sand of utter devastation. Every memory of the past 3 years was being recontextualized in her mind, live in real time. Her triumphs, her frustrations, her secret affair, all of it had played out on a stage, one owned, under lights I controlled. She wasn't a player. She was an exhibit. While you were negotiating your $20,000 raise in a hotel room, I said, twisting the knife, my forensics team was already preparing the audit. Your little affair didn't trigger my investigation, Sarah. It was just a footnote in David's file. A particularly tacky example of his poor judgment. She flinched as if struck. So the performance review, the interviews. A formality, I confirmed, but a useful one. I had my team do a full, unbiased analysis of your work, stripped of David's special consideration. Do you know what they found? I didn't wait for an answer. They found a competent mid-level manager with average metrics and an overinflated sense of entitlement. Your actual value to the company, based on quantifiable results, doesn't justify your previous salary, let alone a raise. I let that sink in. She had built her entire identity on being a shark, a killer in the corporate world. I had just informed her she was chum. Our marriage wasn't a romance, Sarah. It was a partnership, a merger. And you just violated the most fundamental clause. I pushed the wine glass aside. The meal was over. So here are the terms of our dissolution. Tomorrow morning, you will tender your resignation from Innovate Dynamics, effective immediately. You will cite, quote, personal reasons. There will be no severance package. Your unvested stock options are, of course, void. You will sign a comprehensive non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement regarding me, Apex, and Innovate Dynamics. In return, I will not file a civil suit against you for your complicity in defrauding my company. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She was looking at me, but she was seeing a ghost, the ghost of the man she thought she married. As for us, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion, this is over. My lawyer will have the divorce papers sent to you by the end of the week. They will be simple. We divide our liquid assets, sell the apartment. You get what you came in with. Nothing more. I stood up, placing my napkin neatly on the table. The waiter, sensing the shift, hovered nearby. I didn't even look at him. I looked down at my wife, a broken stranger sitting amidst the ruins of a $10,000 meal she would never finish. You leveraged a 15-year partnership for a $20,000 raise. You cheated on the majority shareholder with a mid-level manager who was already on his way out. I said my final words, a clinical summary of her failure. It wasn't a shortcut to success, Sarah. It was the single worst deal of your life. I turned and walked away without looking back, leaving her alone with the city lights, the half-eaten brioche, and the bill for everything she had just lost. It was already paid. I didn't take a cab. I walked the 20 blocks home, the cold February air a welcome shock. The city lights, once a symbol of our shared ambition, now looked like cold, distant stars in my private universe. There was no elation, no fist-pumping triumph, just the quiet, clean hum of a problem solved. A system restored to its proper order. Sarah was no longer my wife. She was a miscalculation, a failed line of code that had been found and deleted. The emotional loss had been processed weeks ago at 2:17 a.m. The dinner was simply the final board meeting, the vote to liquidate a toxic asset. Her merit was a lie, she told herself, and I was the auditor who had finally called her on it. I slept in the guest room. When I woke, the apartment was unnervingly silent. I walked into the kitchen. On the marble island, next to her apartment keys and the company credit card she no longer had a right to, was her wedding ring. A single, perfect circle of gold, now just a piece of metal, signifying a defunct partnership. No note. No theatrical mess. Just the cold, quiet admission of her complete and total defeat. It was the most professional thing she had done in years. At 9:01 a.m., my Apex phone buzzed. It was a forwarded email from Robert, the chairman. Attached was Sarah's resignation letter. It was 2 sentences long, citing, quote, personal reasons, and thanking the company for the opportunity. The compliance was absolute. She understood the terms of her surrender. An hour later, my divorce attorney called. "The papers have been dispatched, Marcus. She'll be served by noon. Simple, clean, just as you instructed." "Thank you, Miles," I said, hanging up. I stood in my home office, looking out at the skyline. The empire was intact. More than intact, it was purified. The rot had been carved out with surgical precision. I had won. It was a total, undeniable victory on every front. But winning a war you never wanted to fight doesn't feel like victory. It feels like survival. And as I stared out at the sprawling city I had conquered, I was acutely aware that I was standing in it completely and utterly alone. What would you do if you were in my shoes and held all the power to ruin both of their careers?